Oh, good. John's background is finally Christmas themed. That must mean we're done talking about all those stupid horror movies, right? Wrong, idiot. I'm sorry I called you an idiot. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. I'm an artist and a film enthusiast, and dare I say horror movie connoisseur? Is that pretentious to call yourself a connoisseur? You know what? I don't think it matters. They say that if you do something for 10,000 hours, you become a professional at it. You become something, there's something about that. I don't know. Somebody wrote a book. Don't ask me. The point is, I would say, having done zero math at all, it's probably safe to say that I've seen 10,000 hours of horror movies. That seems reasonable. And thus, with a chill in the air and sweaters akimbo, I'm here to talk to you about Christmas horror movies. Now, if you're new to the horror genre, if you just got introduced by my Halloween video, welcome. Welcome to the family. You might have thought, as many moms do, that horror only goes from, September through October, that's kind of horror season. But turns out, people who make horror movies like to push boundaries, and they like to make things that make the people who might think that just a little bit uncomfortable. There is something about that I just so greatly appreciate. That people take such a beautiful, kind, good holiday and just ruin it. I love it. There's something about that that's so profoundly fun. And, obviously, if you do it in a dark way, there's some horror movies set around Christmas that I just don't really like because I think they're a little too dark and a little too gross. There's a fly. There's a fly in this room, and I'm gonna lose my mind. The first movie I'd like to talk to you about is Dead Snow, and it's actually two movies. So there's Dead Snow and Dead Snow 2, Red v. Dead. They're Christmas-ish. They're really more snow-based. That's why they're kind of early on the list. They're zombie movies, but they're zombie comedies. There's this kind of whimsical sense about them that you really don't find very often. Tommy Wirkola directed these movies, and I love his filmmaking. I think that there's something... He seems like a guy who wants to have fun with every premise that he makes. Another of those in a second. But I just appreciate the sensibility that he has of seeing snow, zombies in the snow. What more do you want? That's enough of a concept for him to work with, and I totally agree. There are two of these movies. It's Nazis, it's zombie Nazis in the snow. Like I said, not super Christmassy, but I think they fit that winter holiday horror kind of vibe, and they're just a lot of fun. They're just great. Similar vein is Tommy Wirkola's next, I don't know if it's his next film. I'm not sure exactly what the order of these is. Anyway, this came out last year. Violent Night with David Harbour playing Santa Claus who's going around just killing a bunch of bad guys. Now, you may be thinking, this is not a horror movie, John. I watched this movie, and you're correct. It's not a horror movie, and if that frustrates you, it's not your list. This is my list. So make your own list if you want to do that. And then don't include it. Or do your own list that's 10 of just this movie. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. The internet is a free place, kind of, so in its own way. Anyway, Violent Night is such a great movie. It combines Wirkola's kind of weird, sardonic Christmas twist with David Harbour, who was, I'll say this every time he comes up, every time, and you can't stop me, he is a great Hellboy, and it sucks that we don't get more David Harbour Hellboy, okay? I'm sure the next guy's gonna do great, but David Harbour killed it as Hellboy, and I will die on this hill. I really do want to talk about this movie. I promise you I do. Violent Night is a very fun movie with a very fun premise that delivers on everything you kind of want that premise to be. The idea of Santa Claus being this Nordic god creature going around delivering presents, but also just drinking heavily and killing people. You couldn't have picked a better cast. It's played brilliantly. It also has a little bit of Home Alone kind of thrown in there for a couple of minutes. I highly recommend this one if you're looking for kind of an introduction to the idea of a subversive Christmas movie. Like I said, it's not horror, but it kind of fits in the same ultra graphic violent world that a lot of these others do. So it makes the list. And also it's just, like I said, just a really fun movie. Up next on our list is Better Watch Out. Speaking of a version of Home Alone, this is essentially Home Alone, but what if all of the things did the things that they would normally do? I.e. a paint can hitting someone in the face at that velocity. Turns out it doesn't just knock people down the stairs. I think we've all had the thought watching Home Alone, these wet bandits should be dead. So much they should be dead. And this is just a movie that says, yeah, they should have it, and let's see what that would kind of look like. There's also a great midway twist. I won't spoil it, but it's a really tremendous kind of shift of the movie. Because I think at some point you'd get tired of Home Alone, but violent? Maybe not. I said that out loud, and then I heard it, and I went, no, no. No, you wouldn't. Either way, the twist is great, and it continues into being a very different but also equally interesting movie. This one is also the first horror movie on this list that is set around Christmas time, so you get the energy, you get all the lights and the decorations and all the snow and all that kind of stuff. Then we come to Christmas Bloody Christmas, also a movie that came out, I think last year, maybe the year before. It's one of the Shudder original kind of things, which is sort of a 50-50 shot. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're terrible. My personal opinion, this one is tremendous. The basic concept of this movie is there's these military drones that are humanoid, and they, essentially Terminator, and they get kind of decommissioned and turned into these robot Santa Clauses. So there's just one in this movie, but he's like a mall Santa who's just like a robot doing robot stuff, and then at some point, the programming kicks in, he grabs an axe, and he is just off to the races. It has a lot of Terminator energy, but it mixes that very well with this Christmas, all the lighting, all the kills, everything's creative and very, very Christmassy. Bonus points for this movie, I'm fairly confident it's one of the few, if not the only one on this list, to definitively kill a child in its movie. I'm sure that's not bonus points to some people, but to me, that's a thing that, like, if you do it right, if you convince us that it's, not okay. If you convince us that the movie thinks it's okay, it's a very interesting thing, and you don't see it very often. So it's like, bonus points for pulling that off. Also, just like, it's Robot Santa with an axe. It's awesome. It's a very low budget movie, but not low budget in the way that you feel like it's just kind of cheap. It feels run and gun. It feels frantic and exciting, and also just very crowd pleasing. Another more independent kind of project, something that isn't along the studio level, Anna in the Apocalypse. This is somehow another Christmas zombie movie with a little tiny baby added twist of being a musical, which I do not enjoy musicals as a whole, just as a genre. Not really my favorite thing in the world. This one works for me. I don't think it's fantastic. These really aren't in any order necessarily. Like, it's not worst to best or anything like that. It's just movies that I recommend. Most of this movie works. It doesn't always stick the landing on a few kind of jokes and plot lines throughout, but overall, the movie is quite fun, and I highly recommend it. Especially if you've never seen it, it's a great time to just throw on. It's in concept alone, it's worth watching. Next up, a Christmas horror classic. Some would argue the grandfather of the slasher movie. Most would argue probably one of the earliest slasher movies, Black Christmas. This is such a tense thriller. It lives in a saturated, Christmas-filled world that the further you get in, the more you start to see how empty it really is, and in that void comes this evil presence. It's along the lines of the classic slasher in that it doesn't necessarily have a lot of gore or blood or kills, but the ones that are there are incredibly shocking, and it's, like I said, it's just such a really tense movie. There's also a remake that is saturated in a very different direction. That's one that I go back and forth on. I think it's either one of the best Christmas horror movies or one of the worst, and it depends on the year. Next up, probably the weirdest movie on this list, and I would argue maybe the most boring if you're not already invested in it. It's called Christmas Evil. It's about a kid who sees his mom kissing Santa Claus, and that messes him up. That does a number on him. And he ends up growing up to be a toy maker and loses his mind and ends up on a little rant, just a baby rampage. Great movie. It's got probably my favorite ending of any Christmas movie. Maybe my favorite ending of any movie as a whole, because it is so out of left field that I was so unprepared for it. Really incredible. It's worth watching just for that. But also, I think the more you kind of delve into it as a character study, the more open you are to that concept, the better it is. 3 more, stick with me, we can do it. Our third to last is Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's actually, I recommend the whole franchise because it is one of the most unhinged series of films I have ever seen in my entire life. The first is about, as you can imagine, most of these are, a crazy guy dresses up like Santa Claus and goes on a killing spree. The second one is also kind of about that. Movie 2, it already takes it from this kind of schlocky, slasher, just grimy grindhouse kind of movie, and it turns it into some very strange character study, tries to be high art, but also tries to be equally schlocky. Quite honestly, part 2 is mostly just clips from the first one, but man, the parts that aren't are some of the greatest film ever created. It's incredible. And then 3, 4, and I think 5, there might be 6. I don't even remember how many there are because it's such a fever dream. The whole series is just, it just gets more and more insane. And then the last one, I can't remember if it's 5 or 6, but the last one, it just brings this extra life right as you're kind of losing your energy on it. It brings this extra life, this idea of these toys that are either possessed or maybe just built for this. It's kind of up to interpretation. But the idea of killer toys and this sort of Santa Claus figure, it really brings it back. It injects some life into the franchise to kind of finish it out. Anyway, like I said, I highly recommend all of them because they're nuts. I think if you just watch them back to back, it's one of the best experiences you can have. Great for a Christmas party if you want to just throw something on and not worry too much about like people caring, which sounds so bad, but it's true. Second to last, The Shining. I mean, it's a classic, right? Stanley Kubrick. It's kind of over the holidays, sort of. It's not really Christmassy, so it's, like I said, these aren't in any order. They're not in an escalation of Christmassiness. But this movie's just so good. I mean, it's inarguably one of the best horror movies ever made. It still holds up to this day, as far as I'm concerned. Kind of a weird one because it depends on how much you're willing to engage with the movie. But if you get yourself into the headspace of the film, it's so rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding experiences you can have with a movie, or it's just something to kind of chuckle at as it goes along. I hope you engage with it because I think that that's what you should do with good film. But if you don't want to be pretentious like me, you'll enjoy it probably on the other end too. Final movie. We have made it here, and I'm sure, by the way, before we get to this, I'm sure I've forgotten your favorite Christmas horror movie. I'm not sorry, it was a direct personal attack, and you deserve it. My final Christmas horror movie, my favorite Christmas horror movie of all time, Krampus. I am fully aware that so many people don't love this movie. I think that this one is top notch. It's not scary enough that you couldn't show it to your family, but it is scary enough that it gets that kind of chilly, creepy undertone. It's directed by Michael Dougherty. He's the guy who did Trick or Treat, so obviously I like his style. If you didn't like Trick or Treat, you might not like this. You still might not, even if you did, but I highly recommend checking it out. Krampus is, obviously it's about the Christmas devil. Wearing the, I don't know if you can see, but I'm wearing the sweater. Shout out Jamie, thanks for this. This movie has such a fun sense to it. It knows exactly when to play with the tone. It does a good job being creepy and a great job being fun. And of all of these movies, I think this is the one that feels the most Christmassy. Could that be in part due to the fact that I watch it literally every year on Christmas Eve? Who's to say? Who knows? It probably not, I bet. It probably definitely, yeah, I bet it does. So there's my starter pack for Christmas horror movies. What of these movies have you seen? What did you like? What other movies should I check out if I haven't already seen them? Or should I put in a starter pack volume 2? Thank you for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on movies, comics, TV shows, paintings, I suppose, holidays, anything of the like, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment down below what you want me to review next, or do none of those things because I am not your dad. And thus, with a chill in the air and sweaters akimbo, I would like to talk to you. Sweaters. I think if you watch them back to back to back, I am losing my mind at this fly.